To program in Swift, we need software. Apple has created an excellent software application called Xcode. When we build apps, we use lots of different tools. There's an editor where we write code, a interface builder to work on the visual components of the app, and a debugger to help fix problems. Xcode is a combination of all these tools and is known as an integrated development environment. It provides everything we need to build apps all in one place. Remember that we're learning to speak like a programmer, so you will often hear people refer to Xcode as an IDE, which, as we just mentioned, is an integrated development environment. Xcode is really easy to install. If you've ever installed an app from the Mac App Store, that's all there is to it.
On your Mac, open up the Mac App Store. In the top right-hand corner, search for Xcode in the search bar, and it should be one of the first few results. Once you find Xcode, all you need to do is click the Install button that you see here. I already have Xcode installed, so it says Open, but yours should say Install right here. Now, it may take a while to finish, but once it's done installing, go ahead and open it up. One thing you might notice immediately when you open Xcode is that your version number, displayed right here, may be different from mine. That is totally okay. Apple releases a new version of Xcode every year, so you may have a newer version than I do. While your version of Xcode may look different, much of it doesn't change, so you should be able to learn from this video regardless of the different versions. If and when there are changes that affect your code, like a new version of Swift, we will provide a visual callout like this with an audible tone like this to make sure you notice that something might have changed. To figure out what's changed, just look in the teacher's notes. If the changes are substantial, we'll re-record the content so you're always up to date. Xcode has a lot of features, but we're not going to look at any of that for now because all we want to do is play around with the Swift language. To do that, Xcode has an appropriately named tool called Playgrounds that lets us do just that. So in the Xcode window right here, click on the first button to create your first playground. Now, once you do that, Xcode will ask you for three things. First, it asks for a name for the file. Now, you can leave it to the default My Playground, or you can set it to the name of this course. So I'm going to call it Swift Basics. We also need to specify which platform we're using. We want this to be iOS and not macOS. Eventually, we'll be learning how to build iOS apps, so we're going to work with the iOS platform. Finally, once you hit Next, you need to pick a location to save it. Now, this is totally up to you, but make sure you have this location handy as we'll be coming back to it often. So in here, under iOS 10, I'm going to create a new folder, Swift Basics, and I'm going to save my playground in there. Now, once I do that, I'll hit Create. Once you create the playground, there should be some code waiting in there for us. Let's talk about each line. The first line that starts with 2 forward slashes is known as a comment. We mentioned that programming is about providing a set of instructions to a computer. Sometimes you'll want to provide instructions for humans as well. More often than not, this human might be yourself. Why would we want to do that? Well, there are a couple of reasons. If you're working on a project that takes a lot of time, you might come back to some code you wrote months earlier and not remember exactly what the code does. By commenting your code and leaving a description of what the code does, you save yourself from having to read the code carefully to understand. If you're working on a project with someone else, it is a good idea to leave comments as explanations or instructions for them. This way, if they don't understand something, they don't have to hunt you down to explain the code. Finally, you may be brought onto the project where the developer who originally wrote the code doesn't work on that project anymore. If they had left comments in there, it's easier for you to understand what's going on. Now, bottom line, comments are good, especially if the code does anything complex. So get used to writing comments in your code. We'll be doing that throughout all our courses. As you write out a comment explaining what the code does or will do, you might find that you end up writing better code as a result. Now, one thing I want to point out, you'll notice that I have line numbers here, and I said that the comment is on line number 1. If you don't have comments on your version of the playgrounds that you're looking at, all you need to do is go to the Xcode menu, go to Preferences, or hit the keyboard shortcut Command, comma, and then under Text Editing, make sure you have line numbers selected. This area right here is called the gutter, and these are line numbers. Okay, so on line 3, we have another line of code. This line isn't so important right now. We'll get to it in the future, but right now it doesn't mean anything to us. So let's just get rid of it altogether. Now, this last line here is our first line of actual code. But let's take a break here and start our first real lesson in the next video.